The topic of being gay is a controversial one in both Christian and Muslim societies, but clearly more so in one than the other. More than 90% of the 64 countries that prohibit same-sex relationships have a majority Muslim or Christian population. However, of the 11 countries that still impose the death penalty for homosexuality, all except Nigeria and Uganda are mainly Muslim countries, with the death penalty based on Sharia law. According to Erasing 76 Crimes, a website that focuses on the human toll of anti-LGBT laws and the struggle to repeal them, overall, a strong trend is moving the world away from homophobic repression, though it is happening slowly. One of the main sticking points appear to be religion, because the more religion and state are intertwined, the harsher this oppression tends to be. And most countries where homosexuality is punishable by death are those where Islamic codes have been embedded into law. Simply put, when religious codes are adopted as law, LGBT plus people are often among the first to suffer. But what do the Holy Scriptures actually say, and how tolerant are they of gay people? Allow me to highlight some of the more common arguments surrounding homosexuality in both the Bible and the Quran before drawing a comparison between them. Let's start with the Bible. Interpretations and opinions vary greatly among religious scholars and individuals. Some argue that the Bible condemns homosexuality, while others believe it is much more complex than that. One of the main verses that are often cited in discussions about homosexuality is found in the book of Leviticus 18:22, which states, "You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination." This verse is often interpreted as a clear condemnation of same-sex relationships. However, it's important to note that this verse is part of a larger section in Leviticus that outlines various sexual prohibitions, including adultery and incest. It's also important to consider the context of the time in which Leviticus was written. The ancient Hebrews lived in a patriarchal society, where male dominance and procreation were highly valued. Homosexuality may have been viewed as a threat to these values. In the New Testament, there are more passages that are referenced in discussions about homosexuality. One of these is found in the book of Romans 1:26-27, which states, "For this reason God gave them up to degrading passions, that women exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural, and in the same way also men, giving up natural intercourse with women, were consumed with passion for one another. Men committed shameless acts with men, and received in their own persons the due penalty for their error." This passage has been interpreted by some as a clear condemnation of homosexuality. However, others argue that it is referring to pagan practices of the time, where temple prostitution and same-sex relations were often intertwined. Again, the context in which Paul the Apostle was writing this letter should be considered. He was writing to a community of believers in Rome who were facing persecution, and he may have been using the language of his time and the culture to make a point about the dangers of idolatry and immorality. It's also worth noting that there are many passages in the Bible that emphasize the importance of love and compassion, and that condemn actions such as hatred, discrimination, and violence. These passages can be interpreted as promoting acceptance and inclusivity, regardless of a person's sexual orientation. Of course, some Christian movements, such as the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox churches and the Coptic Orthodox, where I came from, hold mostly conservative views, while other Christian denominations like the Anglican and the Methodist churches tend to have more liberal views. Ultimately, the topic of being gay according to the Bible is a very complex and nuanced, with different interpretations and opinions among religious scholars, individuals, and the church itself. While some may view the Bible as condemning homosexuality, Others may see it as promoting love and acceptance. It is up to each individual to explore these different perspectives and come to their own conclusions and how they interpret the Bible's teachings. On the other hand, as I mentioned in my previous video, Muslims believe that the Quran contains the literal words of God, not just a representation, but literal. This means that while there is plenty of debate and discussion to be had, there is a lot less compromise compared to Christianity and the Bible. As a result, the topic of being gay according to the Quran is one that has the potential to spark even more controversy. Still, just as with the Bible, there are different interpretations and opinions among Muslims and religious scholars. The Quran doesn't explicitly mention homosexuality by that term, but there are several passages that are often cited in discussions about same-sex relationships. One of these passages is found in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah number 7, which states, "And we had sent Lot when he said to his people, 'Do you commit such immorality as no one has preceded you with from among the worlds? Indeed, you approach men with desire instead of women. Rather, you are transgressing people.'" This passage is often interpreted as a clear condemnation of homosexuality, and many Muslim scholars believe that same-sex relationships are prohibited in Islam. In 2015, following a gay pride parade in Turkey, members of the Islamic Defense Youth put up menacing posters that read, "If you see those carrying out the people of Lot's dirty work, kill the doer and the done." They later doubled down on their message by asking, "What? Are you offended by the words of our Prophet?" Perhaps the Islamic Defense League should consider that the infamous passage from the Quran is part of a larger story about the Prophet Lot and his people, who were punished for their wickedness and immorality, including adultery and idolatry. Furthermore, they should consider the context of the time in which the Quran was revealed. Homosexuality was not a topic of discussion in pre-modern Islamic societies, and attitudes towards same-sex relationships varied widely. Some Islamic scholars argue that the Quran's silence on homosexuality is significant and suggests that it is not a major sin or offense. In modern times, there is a growing movement among some Muslims to reinterpret Islamic teachings and promote greater acceptance and inclusivity towards LGBTQ+ individuals. This movement is often referred to as queer Islam and seeks to challenge traditional interpretation of the Quran and the Hadith, or the sayings of the Prophet. For instance, you can look up the gay Muslim Imam Mohsen Hendricks. Just like Christians, queer Muslims argue that the Quran emphasizes the importance of love and compassion, and that discrimination and intolerance towards LGBTQ+ individuals are contrary to Islamic teachings. It is very interesting that the Islamic perspective on homosexuality is heavily anchored in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, a tale from the Bible which is also recounted in the Quran. Conservative Muslims typically view this story as a basis for discriminating against homosexuals, but while there is no specific earthly punishment listed in the Quran, the Old Testament of the Bible clearly warns that homosexuals are to be put to death. Yet, as I mentioned at the start of this video, it's the majority Muslim nations that impose the death penalty more than the Christians. It's a strange contradiction, but there is an explanation. During the medieval era, Islamic scholars believed that homosexuality was a type of adultery and therefore warranted earthly punishments. However, influential figures like Abu Hanifa, the creator of the Hanafi school of Islam, argued that since a homosexual relationship did not result in offspring with an unknown father, it could not be categorized as adultery. The actual Islamic basis for penalizing homosexuality stems from the hadith, or the sayings attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. The same holds for punishments related to apostasy, heresy, blasphemy, or insults to Islam, as none of these are found in the Quran but are only mentioned in certain hadith. There are two problems here. Number one is that the hadith were recorded nearly 2 centuries after the Prophet's lifetime, and their authenticity has been disputed since at least the 9th century by scholars like Imam al-Nasa'i. Also, that one particular hadith that Muslims use at all the times to condemn homosexuality, the hadith that says, if you see those carrying out the people of Lot's dirty work, kill the doer and the done. That particular hadith has been weakened by many Muslim scholars like Imam al-Bukhari, al-Nasa'i, al-Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah. It is fascinating how Muslims get frustrated when weakened hadith are used by some atheists or Christians against Islam. Yet at the same time, when it comes to condemning homosexuality and demanding death punishment for gay people, Muslims themselves use weakened hadith that has been falsified by many Muslim scholars. Additionally, there is no historical evidence whatsoever for the Prophet ordering anyone to be punished for homosexuality. Despite this logical reasoning, unlike Christianity, which is much more agreeable to change, many Muslims are still unwilling to alter their opinions. It is time for this to change. It is time for the whole world to stand up for human rights, including Islamic countries. It is time to revisit your beliefs and re-examine them. You don't have to ditch your beliefs or abandon your religion, but perhaps there are different interpretations, different scholarly arguments, and different evidence that promote a more compassionate stand and provide an opportunity to improve humanity as a whole. If you like this video, please consider supporting my channel on Patreon. The links are in the description below. Together, we can raise awareness and we can make a change. Thanks for watching.